The South Korean special delegation left for Pyongyang on Wednesday morning to arrange details for the Inter-Korean summit, as well as to try and make progress on Inter-Korean cooperative projects and, of course, the thorny subject of denuclearization. It's said to be another important crossroads in North Korean affairs. Will Pyongyang show they're willing to continue with engagement, or will they harden their stance, sending a message to the US? To try and help answer that, we have with us Dr. Myong-hyun from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Thank you for taking the time to come in today again.
A pleasure to be here.
Now, details understandably are quite limited at the moment, but so far we heard that Seoul has confirmed that the delegation has arrived and they've met with various officials, including Ri Son-kwon, chairman of the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the country, and Yong-chol, one of the most senior officials who has been negotiating with both South Korea and the US in recent months. That's a good sign so far, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, in the sense that, but the most important part here is whether the high-level envoys will be able to sit down with Kim Jong-un himself and discuss the most important matter of the day, which is the progress in the denuclearization on the part of North Korea. So that's the most important step, and the meeting, we'll say, in this visit.
If the delegation don't meet Kim Jong-un, then would you regard that as a failure? Couldn't they still arrange details without the intervention of Kim Jong-un?
Well, definitely. I mean, theoretically speaking, Kim Jong-un doesn't have to be there in the meeting to arrange for the terms of the agreement or anything. But on the other hand, if the Kim Jong-un is not present, then it will really take away the weight and importance of this high-level envoy visit to Pyongyang. We have to understand that this visit by the envoy is actually the same as the last visit that took place in March, which led to this unprecedented summit between US President Trump and then Kim Jong-un himself in Singapore. So in a way, that's the importance and expectation that the envoys are carrying during this visit. So if Kim Jong-un is not going to meet with the envoys, then I think it spells trouble for the future of the denuclearization talks, but also as the inter-Korean dialogue.
It was confirmed that when the delegation left that they would be taking with them a letter by President Moon Jae-in. I mean, couldn't they potentially have some sort of communication by, again, letters? Because diplomacy with North Korea does seem to involve a lot of letters.
Well, the reason why the envoys and also the North Koreans and the Americans are making this big show of showing the letters is because we understand that each of these process or like visits and meetings carry very important symbolic political meanings. So the letter symbolizes the level of discussion, also as how high the discussions are being conducted right now. So that's why the letters are being carried back and forth. But on the other hand, what really matters again is what's in there, the content of the letter. And we know for a fact that President Moon would like to in a way, not push by Kim Jong-un, but then goad Kim Jong-un to carry out some denuclearization steps to smooth the ongoing discussion with the United States.
So exactly. Well, I mean, the question is, what is in that letter? Because if President Moon, he needs to pressure North Korea at some point, doesn't he? Because especially President Moon himself, he's getting pressure from the US.
That's right. I mean, the pressure is coming from all fronts. But then President Moon, in a way, he has to deliver on his own promise about developing the inter-Korean dialogue and achieving the denuclearization of North Korea. So in that sense, I think President Moon is not bound right now, in the sense that he would like to separate the inter-Korean dialogue from the denuclearization talks, because there's denuclearization talks is by default highly uncertain and risky, but he wants to develop the inter-Korean track as far and as fast as possible. So he would like to separate the two, but at the same time, the practical limitations implies that he cannot really go ahead with the inter-Korean dialogue without achieving progress in the denuclearization front. So it's right now, I think, at a stage where President Moon is putting the old, inter-Korean dialogue together with the denuclearization talks, so that, in a way, he has to deliver on both fronts right now.
Talking about pressure from the US, we see that in the fact that the day before this delegation goes to Pyongyang, President Moon himself has a phone call with US President Donald Trump, and that was supposed to have lasted for 50 minutes, which is quite long for these kind of talks between leaders. Can we consider this a final check, per se, before President Moon was sending the delegation to Pyongyang, and just to make sure that their message coordinates with South Korea and the US?
Definitely. I mean, this is a very important it's actually a positive sign that the U.S. and South Korea are coordinating their actions regarding North Korea, and at the same time also implies that the both administrations are on the same page. But on the other hand, what troublesome, at least for me, is that the President Trump is spending a lot of kind of phone call time with President Moon, and that implies that there's not such a channel of communication right now between Pyongyang and Washington. So if if Pyongyang and Washington had ongoing and channel of communication, then there'll be less need for President Trump to spend 15 minutes of his time to talk to President Moon about this.
Of course, yes, but I'm sure both men have very busy schedules that they will be have difficult times to spend 50 minutes with. President Moon, during this conversation, is said to have stressed the importance of the inter-Korean relationship to Trump, saying that having good relations between the two Koreas will actually contribute to the denuclearization of North Korea as well. But do you think Moon Jae-in can convince Trump of that?
Sure. I mean, I think President Moon's message to Washington has been very consistent, that the inter-Korean dialogue is, on the overall, is actually a net positive for the denuclearization talks between the United States and North Korea. So that's the reason why he wanted to go ahead with for example, like setting up the liaison's office in Kaesong, despite strong opposition and pressure coming from Washington. And I think by mentioning again the importance of inter-Korean dialogue in the context of the denuclearization of North Korea, President Moon is reminding President Trump again that inter-Korean dialogue has to proceed no matter what happens on the denuclearization front. So
the last time Chung was sent to North Korea, he immediately afterwards went to Washington, and they had he briefed President Trump on what was discussed, and from there came the unexpected announcement that President Trump was going to hold summit talks with Kim Jong-un. I don't think we can expect anything like that this time. What do you think are some of the limitations that Chung has at these talks at this time? Because we have a lot of expectations that they will be able to mediate between North Korea and the US, but actually at the end of the day, it's an issue that has to be solved between the US and North Korea, no?
That's correct. I mean, what's going against Jong-un's visit to Pyongyang compared to the last time is that he's playing against a much heightened expectation about his visit. The first time he visited Pyongyang, the expectation on the part of the international community was actually pretty low. So whatever positive outcome he could deliver from Pyongyang, no matter how insignificant it was, it really had an impact, or I would say, in the determination of whether the visit was a success or failure. But this time, I think that there's a very clear bar and then very defined framework for success. What would be success of his visit? So a success in this case would be for Kim Jong-un to reaffirm North Korea's commitment to denuclearization. In addition to that, he'll have to commit to concrete steps towards denuclearization, like the one he apparently promised to President Trump in Singapore, such as shutting down the missile test site in Seoul. So I think Jong-un has this, in a way, higher a bar to clear this time, and he has to bring back from Pyongyang a concrete outcome this time, as opposed to the last time.
There are some who say North Korea when they're dealing with South Korea, they're very friendly and they're very, they try to have good relations. But by doing that, they're trying to drive a wedge between South Korea and the US as well, because South Korea has a different agenda slightly to the US. How important is it that Chung during this visit, and President Moon as well in the upcoming summit, try to balance that two sides, try to counter the fact that North Korea is trying to drive a wedge between them?
Well, in a way, President Moon and South Korea, in this case, is actually playing a double game. I mean, he has to, in a way, that's the role of the intermediary between two opposing sides. So clearly, North Korea would like to have a much better, faster progress in relieving the sanctions. On the other hand, the United States would like to see North Korea engaging in denuclearization steps. These are, in a way, mutually contradictory, exclusive. So I think President Moon will have to somehow play with time this time. So meaning he has to delay, in a way, the expectation and also the demand coming from Washington for the immediate denuclearization of North Korea, and then somehow convince Washington to promise promise to deliver what North Korea wants, which is a declaration of the end of war. And in exchange, North Korea would have to make a very firm commitment to denuclearization. So essentially, North Korea will have to engage and then commit to a roadmap for denuclearization. So these are actually it's a very contradictory task. And I think President Moon is, in a way, caught himself in a bind in this case.
Well, we eagerly await Chung Yong's return to see what he does come back with Pyongyang, and then we'll analyze and break that down again afterwards as well. But moving on to then some other issues. For example, Kim Jong-un, it's his first, he's made his first public appearance in over 2 weeks, 16 days supposedly. So North Korean state media reported that he attended the funeral of a senior official who's in charge of developing long-range missiles. Can you tell us a little bit more about who this person was and what you make of Kim's recent hiatus from public appearances?
Well, Kim Jong-un was away from the public view for like 2 weeks, and then I think the reason is because he wanted to, focus. He also send a message to the outside world that he didn't really care too much about what's going on in terms of a standoff or like denuclearization talks between Pyongyang and Washington. And the reason why he used the funeral of Ju Kyung-kwang, I think that's his name.
Ju Kyu-chang.
Ju Kyu-chan, sorry, Ju Kyu-chan, the former head of the research and development for the North Korea's Ministry of Industry Ministry of Industry, who was in charge of research and development for the long-range missiles and so forth. The reason why he used this event as to mark his reappearance in the public view is because he wants to send a message to the domestic audience that North Korea is formally committed to keeping the nuclear weapons, and then at the same time engage the United States as equals, and then in a way preserve what they have gained on the nuclear front as much as possible. I think that's the reason why he made use of this event to mark his reappearance in the public.
Perhaps a subliminal message to the US as well, because he's honoring someone who's helped develop the missiles, long-range missiles, that could potentially, hurt the US.
That's right. I mean, that's another message that could be there. But I think, Pyongyang is also playing this double game that he would like to, preserve some of the gains they made in terms of nuclear development, but at the same time, we would like to achieve some sort of understanding with Washington in bringing peace and stability to the peninsula. So it's a double game that Pyongyang is also playing against Washington.
Beijing China is one issue that's one player that we haven't mentioned yet. And one development that has come out is Beijing has confirmed that Xi Jinping will not be going to Pyongyang after all for the anniversary of the regime's foundation. Does this surprise you at all?
No, it's not surprising at all. I think there's an inherent risk in attending a major national anniversary in North Korea. We know that for a fact that North Korean national days are marked by huge parades, which includes the display of dangerous weapon systems such as ICBMs and so forth. And right now, I think Xi Jinping is also aware that given the fact that the U.S. and China are in a standoff over the trade issues, going to Pyongyang at this moment and appearing side by side with Kim Jong-un could send a very wrong message to Washington. Actually, even provide excuse for Washington to engage in a very hardline approach towards China. So I think that's the reason why Xi Jinping decided not to go to Pyongyang this time.
Beijing have said they will be sending a different official, Ri Son-kwon, one of Xi Jinping's top officials, to the events. I mean, he is a top official, so Beijing must be trying to send a message that they don't want to send Xi Jinping, but they still need to kind of appease Pyongyang for their sensibilities as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, China has been in a campaign to rebuild its relations with North Korea, which had hit the bottom last year at the height of the tension between Washington and Pyongyang. So it's doing its utmost to rebuild the relationship and bring it back up to what it used to be before Kim Jong-un came to power. So I think the reason why they're sending Ri Son-kwon, which is ranked as number 3 in the Chinese Communist Party's Politburo Standing Committee, which is a supreme governing body of China, is trying to send a very important message to Kim Jong-un that North Korea is being treated as equal to China. That's how important the China sees North Korea to be. And so just the fact that Xi Jinping is not going to be there this time doesn't mean that China is going to turn its back on North Korea again.
Now, looking ahead as well, there's also new developments towards the UN General Assembly, where the White House, apparently the White House has said Trump and Moon Jae-in agreed to meet at the UN General Assembly later this month. Now, the Blue House have actually been a bit more sketchy on those details and have said they were going to be exploring the idea of meeting. They haven't confirmed a meeting yet. South Korea and the US are supposed to be on the same page on this, but they seem to be having different messages. What do you make of this?
Well, it's about President Moon's, I think, perception of a risk right now. The success of the trilateral meeting or bilateral meeting between Seoul and Washington and New York hinges upon the success of the envoy's visit to Pyongyang, which is taking place today. So if, for instance, the envoys are able to meet with Kim Jong-un and come out with a firm commitment on part of Kim Jong-un to denuclearization, then I think President Moon can fly to New York and meet with Trump and talk about, like some sort of declaration of the end of the war jointly with the United States. But if the envoy's visit turns out to be not a success, but not a failure, but not a success either, then if President Moon flies to New York and sits down with President Trump, there's some chance that President Trump might pressure President Moon to confirm or commit explicitly to the idea that denuclearization should come first before signing the declaration of the end of the war. So in that sense, I think President Moon is trying to avoid getting caught in a bind.
Well, interesting. Well, keep an eye on all those developments. And thank you for coming in today and sharing us your insights.
My pleasure.